that all said he was MS-13 and was removed from this country.
But you understand, that is you saying that. That is you saying that.
That is them saying that.
No.
Dramatic constitutional showdown erupted in Congress when Representative Dan Goldman confronted Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem over the deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a case that has now become a national test of whether the executive branch must obey the courts.
I now recognize Mr. Goldman for 5 minutes questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to go back to Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case, Madam Secretary. But my first question for you is a pretty simple one. It's basic civics. Which branch of government does the Constitution give the authority to interpret what the law is? The judiciary or the executive branch?
Sir, going forward, the interpretation of the law, you make the laws in this body. The judicial branch makes sure that they have integrity and they're applied properly to individuals.
So I'm just going to take that as the judiciary branch. Now, let's focus for a second on what the judiciary branch has said about this case. We know the Supreme Court has said 9-0 that notwithstanding your statements under oath here today that Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was afforded due process, he was in fact not afforded due process, because then if he were, you would have seen the withholding order that did not permit him to be deported to El Salvador. Now you allege, and I guess the Attorney General alleges, that he's a member of MS-13. That may very well be the case. And if he is, now that is a foreign terrorist organization, certainly the immigration laws would allow him, and in fact require him, to be deported. I certainly would support that. But the problem that we have here is what you allege, what Ms. Green alleges, what the Attorney General alleges, is not the judiciary. You don't get to decide whether or not he is an MS-13 member. And you don't have to take my word for it, because Judge Wilkinson, a Fourth Circuit judge, very conservative, addressed this argument. He said, the government asserts that Abrego Garcia is a terrorist and a member of MS-13. Perhaps, but perhaps not. Regardless, he is still entitled to due process. If the government is confident in its position, it should be assured that position will prevail in proceedings to terminate the withholding of removal order. Will you commit right now to give Mr. Abrego Garcia that process where you can prove your allegation that he is a member of MS-13?
Congressman, that judge that you just quoted did not say he was not a member of MS-13. Who did say that he was a member of MS-13 was law enforcement officers that encountered this individual.
Yeah, he knows that. This is a Fourth Circuit judge. He knows all of what the evidence is, and he's saying if that evidence. So you're not going to commit to follow this order. You won't commit to follow this court order.
By the way, he identified
Madam Secretary,
himself.
I reclaim my time. Stop filibustering.
He was surrounded by gang members of MS-13.
Will you give Mr. Abrego Garcia the due process that the Supreme Court and Judge Wilkinson has required you to give him?
Abrego Garcia is an El Salvador resident who is in his home country. If he were to come back to this country, he would be immediately removed again.
How do you know?
He has received and been treated appropriately, and he is not.
How can you say he's been treated appropriately if the Supreme Court has ruled 9-0? 9-0 that he hasn't been treated appropriately? Why is your opinion better and have more authority than the Supreme Court?
Investigators, 2 judges, an immigration court that all said he was MS-13 and was removed from this country.
But you understand, that is you saying that. That is you saying that.
That is them saying that. This
no.
Investigators and law
that is
enforcement
you making that determination.
Against him. If you don't trust
the court has considered all that. The judge has considered all that, Madam Secretary. And if you would be quiet, because I'm reclaiming my time, you are not following this court order. But let's focus on the court order, because this opinion also says that to facilitate, which the Supreme Court is requiring, is an active verb. It requires that steps be taken. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia to allow him to get due process?
Abrego Garcia is in his home country.
What
If he were to come
steps
back here,
have
your
you
advocacy-
taken?
If your continued advocacy for him were to...
I'm not advocating for him.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
advocating for a
Absolutely.
court order, Madam
Gone to the
Secretary.
mat for this
The
man
court
who
order
has terrorized
says
people
that
in
you
traffic
must take
and human
steps
beings.
to follow the court order. You are here under oath. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia pursuant to this court order?
It's got to be extremely discouraging to be one of your constituents. To see you fight for a terrorist like this and not fight for them is extremely alarming to me.
I'm fighting for due process. And that's under the Constitution.
Gentleman's
and you
time
should
has
fight too for
expired.
due process.
The gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize...
What began as a simple civics question quickly turned into a fierce clash about who truly decides the law in the United States. Goldman opened with a question every high school student is expected to answer. Which branch of government has the authority to interpret the law, the judiciary or the executive? Noem responded cautiously, acknowledging that Congress makes the laws and the judiciary ensures they are applied with integrity. Goldman pressed her to the obvious conclusion that it is the courts, not the Department of Homeland Security, that have the final word. From there, the congressman zeroed in on the heart of the controversy. The Supreme Court, in a rare unanimous decision, ruled 9-0 that Abrego Garcia had not been given proper due process before he was deported to El Salvador. Despite that ruling, Noem testified under oath that the man had been treated appropriately. Goldman pointed out the contradiction, telling her that if due process had truly been followed, the government would have seen the existing court order that barred his removal. The administration has repeatedly labeled Abrego Garcia a member of MS-13, a designation that would make him deportable under terrorism-related immigration laws. Goldman made clear that if the allegation is proven in court, he would support removal, but he emphasized a fundamental principle: accusations from politicians or even law enforcement do not replace a judicial determination. To underscore his point, Goldman quoted Judge Wilkinson of the Fourth Circuit, a conservative jurist who wrote that even if the government believes the man is a terrorist, he is still entitled to due process. The judge challenged the administration to prove its claims through legal proceedings rather than ignoring them. Goldman then asked the defining question of the hearing: would the secretary commit to giving Abrego Garcia the process ordered by the courts so the government could present its evidence lawfully? Noem refused to make that commitment, insisting instead that officers who encountered the man had already determined he was MS-13. The exchange grew more heated as Goldman reminded her that the Supreme Court, not DHS investigators, has ultimate authority. He demanded to know what steps the department had taken to comply with the order requiring the government to facilitate the man's return so he could pursue his legal case. Noem answered that Abrego Garcia was already in his home country and would be removed again if he returned. That response struck at the core of the dispute. Goldman accused the secretary of openly defying a court mandate and placing her own judgment above that of the judiciary. He insisted he was not defending a gang member, but defending the Constitution itself, the idea that even the most accused person has the right to a fair process before the government acts. Noem fired back with a political counterattack, telling Goldman it must be discouraging for his constituents to see him fight for what she called a terrorist. The congressman shot back that he was fighting for due process, not for any individual, as the chairman ended the time. This confrontation was about far more than one deportation. It exposed a deeper battle over whether the executive branch can ignore court rulings when it claims national security is at stake. If a unanimous Supreme Court decision can be brushed aside, critics warn, then no constitutional protection is truly secure. The hearing left unanswered whether the administration will ultimately obey the order or continue to resist it. What is clear is that the struggle between the courts and the executive over immigration enforcement is entering dangerous new territory. If you want reporting that explains not only what was said, but why it matters for the future of American democracy, subscribe to the channel and stay with us for continuing coverage.